Thank you. For those who are just joining, we're about to get started. Please put your name and location in the chat box, and welcome to our webinar. It will be recorded, and we're just going to get started. My name is Janine Rios, and thank you so much for joining this webinar. We've been hearing for months that there's a need for staff wellness information and resources and ideas. And so we are working with an amazing panel today who's going to share their strategies that they've been able to implement and use that have really made a huge difference in terms of staff wellness, motivation, and retention. Our moderator for today is going to be Ilana Sambuco Paul. She is, I'll give her a proper introduction in a few minutes. But let's go over just kind of the agenda of what's going to happen today. It is a 75-minute webinar, so that's on purpose. We wanted to make sure that we left time for questions at the end. A lot of times, I know I attend webinars, and right when it's getting really meaty and deep and exciting, it's time to end the webinar. And we feel like this webinar is going to go really fast too, so we added an extra 15 minutes. We hope that that serves everyone on the call. And that said, if there are a ton of questions, we'll get to the most that we can, and then we'll follow up via email to answer any other questions that we can. So we're going to have a brief overview, then introductions, and then we're going to jump into a panel discussion. Like I said, we're going to try to leave some time for question and answers, and keep, when the webinar's over, don't just leave your screen and take a break. We have a survey that's going to pop up in your, on your computer, and we really appreciate it if you can fill out the quick survey. It's 5 questions. We're going to use that information as we have to plan future webinars and get your input, not only on how this webinar was, but on maybe some topics that you might want to go deeper on in this that were covered today, or for future topics. Next slide. So if you're new to the No Kid Hungry campaign, we're a campaign by Share Our Strength. And our big overarching goal is really to decrease food insecurity among kids. We work with community organizations and a lot of school districts across the nation, and really work to support what y'all are doing, what's working, these kind of events where we can share promising practices without having to reinvent them ourselves, but just kind of maybe tweak them or implement what you hear today. Why do we do this? We know the importance of kids who receive the nourishment that they need, and we know that it can help with their learning, with their health, with recovery from illness. We also know that there is an equity issue, and so a lot of the strategies that we will talk about today and that we talk about here at Share Our Strength and No Kid Hungry are to decrease that equity gap and to really provide meals to all kids. Next slide. So just a few housekeeping notes today. If you do encounter any technical difficulties, please use the chat box to get some help. We have our amazing Chelsea on the back end making this all look as smooth as possible. We can help with that. And a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you along with the slide deck. So if your colleagues miss it, or if you need some of the resources that I'm going to mention today, they'll be in the slide deck and they'll be sent to you. If you do have questions for the speaker, you can start entering them into the question and answer box at any time during the webinar and throughout. And we will try to get to those at the end. And then, as I mentioned, after the webinar, you're going to receive a quick survey. So please help us in planning our future webinars by filling that out. Also, one last thing, Chelsea, if you can flip back to the last slide. Sorry about that. One important point that all of our panelists mentioned, that these are ideas that have worked in their regions, in their areas. They've been amazing. They may not work in your districts or in your schools, so please check with your district and state agency before implementing any of these changes that you're going to hear today. Next slide. This webinar is part of our Back to School series that's been going on for over a month, and it's going to go into September. And if you want to check on what the next webinars are or register for some, I put the link in here for the webinars. And some of the topics that are coming are SNAP in schools. That's going to be our next webinar in September. Adding after school to your back to school plans, promoting equity in school meals, and school meals marketing. And so we know that this is an important topic that we're talking about today. So we do have plans for a new resource on staff wellness that will be coming out very soon and sent to everyone who registered for this webinar. Next slide. Also, some of the resources that are recently that have recently come out through the Centers for Best Practices, I've listed here. We have our school meals application outreach toolkit, has a lot of just messaging that you can use that you don't have to recreate as well. You can just pull from there. Alternative income forms resource, and then the upcoming webinars, and a social media toolkit that really highlights free and reduced price school meals. Next slide. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce our moderator for today, Alana Sambuco-Paul. She is a school nutrition specialist. She's been working for No Kid Hungry as a national grant consultant for about 5 years now, where she provides operational and technical guidance for the implementation and promotion of all federal nutrition programs, including breakfast after the bell, school meals, snack, supper, and school meals, and summer meals, sorry about that. And prior to working with No Kid Hungry, she worked as a food service supervisor in Montgomery County Public Schools. She developed marketing plans for the division, supervised 34 school sites, and she created and implemented plans for breakfast, lunch, after-school programs, and developed multiple training for staff. So she has lived through all of this. She has over 20 years of combined experience in the area of school food operations management, marketing, communications, and business development. And I will turn it over to her. Thank you so much, Alana.
Thank you, Janine, for that lovely introduction. We have planned this webinar to be packed with great ideas. But before we get started, I'd like to do a quick poll so that we can see what organization or industry our attendees are representing today. One question, so I guess we can probably do the results whenever you're ready, Chelsea. Great, we have a wide variety of people, mostly food and nutrition service professionals. This is wonderful. It's wonderful to see so many different people on here. So let's start off the presentation by introducing our panel. So I'm going to have each of the panelists, if you could please introduce yourself, let us know your title, your school district, approximate district enrollment, and number of schools. And then if you choose, you can also please tell us or share with us one of your struggles or concerns or stresses that you are working on right now or have recently solved. So we can go ahead and start with Hitesh first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hitesh Haria, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Business Services at Pittsburgh Unified School District. We are a district of about 11,000 students in 17 different schools. I've worked all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast, and my largest school district had 267 schools with 155 students. So I have the entire gamut. The biggest concern right now is staffing, and we're actively working on that. And I'll discuss a couple of those things during the session today. Thank you.
Jessica, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Shelley. I'm the Student Dining Services Director for Cincinnati Public Schools. We have 67 schools and about 36,000 scholars. We are an urban school district, and so we are about 86% free and reduced student population. The majority of our schools do participate in community eligibility provision, but we do have 9 schools that are non-CEP. So we are dealing right now with the collection of applications, which is probably one of my top concerns, is making sure all of our families get those applications in so we can continue to feed all of our youngsters in school, along with the staffing issues and of course, supply chain issues, which I think we've all been dealing with throughout the last 2 years. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's great. Marla, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Alana. I'm Marla Kaplan. I'm the former Director of Food and Nutrition Services and Student Wellness in Montgomery County, Maryland. School district has 208 schools and a student scholar, I like that, Jessica, a scholar enrollment of about 170,000 students. The free and reduced percentage is about 36%. Currently, I am working in food security in our county. I would say that the biggest challenge right now is staff shortages, and I think training. I think over the pandemic, folks have left, new folks have come, and the world has changed, and we're back to a paid free reduced system. And I think we need to retrain many of our employees to what is required to be taken for a reimbursable meal. And I think that there's a whole piece on training that we lack right now.
Great. And Walter, could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Walter Campbell, Executive Director of Nutrition Services with Charleston County School District. We have about 50,000 students in 80 schools covering 1,300 square miles. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to get from one end to the other end of the district. Probably our biggest opportunity or issue that we're working with now is definitely supply chain issues. A company might say they have something that's coming in and we're gonna have 400 cases this next week, and we don't. And so I probably spend at least an hour a day working on supply chain issues. Thanks for being here.
Great. Wonderful. So throughout the discussion, we plan on covering the following topics. We're going to have wellness, staff retention, value, and benefits, connecting with staff and staff appreciation. And we are going to start off with the topic of wellness. So, Hitesh, we all know staff wellness is important, and many of us struggle with incorporating wellness into the work week. To start off our presentation, could you lead us through a quick exercise that you have used at your district to give staff members a moment to reset?
Certainly. My superintendent, Janet Schultz, is a deeply caring person who has placed a high priority of wellness at Pittsburgh Unified School District. And she taught us this phenomenal technique to help reset, focus, or just take a moment for yourself. And we all use this technique from time to time, and it's proven to be highly effective. So would you all like to learn this phenomenal technique with me? Now, before I start, I want to ask you another question. When you get onto the airplane, do you remember the airline staff discussing safety? And one of the things they'll walk you through is, in the case of an emergency, when the oxygen masks fall down, the first thing you need to do is put the oxygen mask on for yourself, and then you can help somebody else. But the priority and wellness is for yourself first. So now that we know your wellness is a priority, here's some simple guidelines of what we're going to do. We're going to take a deep breath in and hold it to the count of 4. You're going to hold your breath to the count of 7, and then exhale through your mouth as much as you can to the count of 8. Of course, do whatever's comfortable for you. And we're going to do this 4 times together. So you can keep your eyes open, close your eyes, whatever you'd like. So go ahead, let's get comfortable and let's get started. Take a deep breath in to the count of 4. Hold for the count of 7. Breathe out to the count of 8. And again, take a deep breath in to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 7. Breathe out to the count of 8. And again, take a deep breath in to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 7. Breathe out to the count of 8. And now for the last one, take a deep positive breath in to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 7. Breathe out to the count of 8. And come on back whenever you're ready. So it literally took us 2 minutes and hopefully helped you reset from whatever you were focusing on before. Thank you. I'd like to pass it on back to Ilana.
Thank you, Hitesh. Where were you about 15 minutes ago? So that was great. Thank you. Moving towards Jessica, as we take a deeper dive into staff wellness, what are some programs that your district has in place that promotes and encourages staff wellness?
Yeah, I'm very, very blessed to be part of a district that takes employee wellness seriously. And we have several programs in place district-wide that takes care of all employees, employee assistance programs. We have different book clubs and wellness programs that people can participate in. But a lot of these happen during lunchtime, which is, of course, when my staff is at their busiest. So we still try and make sure that we're taking time for our staff to have these same wraparound services available to them when it's convenient for them. So either as part of our professional development days, or we will do little snippets on our YouTube channel for them. I'm going to copy Hitish's thing and put that on the YouTube channel. So anytime they're feeling stressed in their office, they can just click on that one and have a 2-minute breathe break. I love that. So things that make it accessible for them, so they don't get forgotten in the overall wellness initiative brought in through our district. I think one of the main ways that we were able to really think about this for our employees is we really took a deep dive into a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation. And it's really kind of a subset of the 5 love languages. If you think about that from personal life, you might have heard that from before, but this is all about workplace and how we show appreciation and how everybody both gives and receives appreciation differently. When we speak about wellness, sometimes it's just generally how they feel received, how they feel appreciated, how they feel valued, and be able to speak that same language to them, either through things like acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, those different things of appreciation that are spoken to in this book can really help make sure that you are connecting with them and speaking to them on their same playing field of wellness.
Great. I love that book. The themes from that book sound amazing. Definitely going to have to add that to my book reading collection. So Marla, at your former district, can you talk about the types of wellness programs that were available for staff? And were there any incentives used to do some of those programs? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. You know, as we think about wellness and we define wellness, it's to what Jessica said, it's all kind of in the eyes of the person that's receiving this assistance. So for one, our staff really mirrored our student population, so it was incredibly diverse. And many of our staff, English was not their first language. So we made sure to offer English courses to our staff, many of which could be online and they could take, that we would support on their own time. Or we offered it during the course of the week after the school day ended. There were also wellness activities such as Tai Chi and yoga and Zumba and chair yoga and other activities, as well as financial planning. And again, to Jessica's point, a lot of these were offered during the staff school day, the school staff school day, which, you know, our staff couldn't be involved if it was at lunchtime or during their workday. So we advocated to our employee wellness and asked for the instructors to be available and to come to us after the end of our employee school day. Again, in many cases, not a lot of employees participated, but it was available to them. And so they knew that we were advocating to do whatever we could do to make sure that they were included in any activities going on in the school system. The other interesting professional development or wellness activity was nutrition. And we think that because we've trained all of our employees on what's a reimbursable meal and all the different colors of fruits and vegetables and what they have to take, that they really understand nutrition. Well, not only do the food service employees not, but regular staff in the school district, such as teachers, were amazed with the trainings that we held. And we did trainings on practical subjects, such as eating on a healthy budget, or what does diabetes mean, or what's in your food, and talk about salt. And you would honestly be amazed at the appreciation level that food service staff and school staff had in understanding or getting a better understanding to what it meant to eat healthy, or what really Nutrition 101 was. Tied to that, in my district, we really rely heavily on partnerships, and it was important for the people that attended our workshops or our nutrition classes or our physical activity classes to feel incentivized that they were valued, or we valued them for even coming. To use the nutrition class as an example, we bought thermometers, food safety thermometers, or we bought refrigeration and oven thermometers so that they could use the practical pieces that they learned in class, and they could take it home with them. So this was really for their personal use. Or we gave them swag bags filled with samples of spices, for instance, garlic powder instead of garlic salt, things that, again, they don't get to take home with. They don't get to have things that are for me. And then we opened up, especially during COVID, in partnership with other organizations outside of the county school system. We got funding to either, in one case, we did a seminar or workshop on mindfulness. And through funding, we were able to provide a swag bag filled with all kinds of expensive resources that staff could then practice on their own. And I know, Lana, you're going to ask me, if it was during COVID and this was virtual, how did you get them to these people that attended? Well, we did. And again, through partnership, we worked with our school bus drivers, and there was a team of us that assembled these swag bags. And the bus drivers had the addresses of all of the people who attended and delivered to their home. So again, was that a big deal? Well, it was a big deal to them, because it let our employees know how much we cared about them, and the fact that they attended, we honored them with the presentation of a gift. So those are just some of the ideas.
Yeah. an amazing partnerships that you've put together, Marla, with all the different avenues, with the wellness and the course. I mean, that was a big undertaking, I know.
Yes, you do, don't you?
Hitesh, your district has a very interesting partnership with other organizations to provide wellness training activities to your staff. Could you tell us a little bit about that setup? And also, if you could provide some tips for somebody that might be looking to set up a wellness program in their district, that would be great.
The wonderful thing about Zoom is you got to unmute.
Yeah.
So these awesome partnerships that we have. We have several partnerships. I'm going to start off with what we do inside the school district first. We have a coordinator of social emotional support and counseling, and they bring in supports from our psychologists and counselors that we have, of course, on staff. And then we have a number of external partners as well. The first one that I'd like to talk about is our county health department. And just recently we had a back to school professional development for food service staff, and our county health department came in there and helped provided support and professional development on promoting wellness, focus, exercise. I heard about chair yoga. This was some chair exercise as well. And they provided some wellness recipes as well for our staff. We also have a partnership with our medical insurance provider, and they're called Kaiser Permanente, and they're pretty huge in California especially. And so we're working through Kaiser's Foundation, and they provide funds for us that help promote wellness. And we've actually got a vendor that's called the Mindful Life Project, and they are doing wellness for students, staff, and families. And they're providing these opportunities on site. They're also providing online opportunities for people to learn about wellness. We also have a grant that we're working through called the NEOP grant, which is the Nutrition, Education, and Obesity Prevention Program. And we partner with the county to be able to do that. And because of that, of course, the county health department provides us with resources as well. So several different partnerships with people doing specific things, helping wellness for the school district as a whole. In terms of tips, I think the biggest thing that we faced was access for our staff, right? So we know that our food service staff, they have a very defined task, and some of our staff are working 2 or 3 jobs. So for them to be able to access the program was so difficult. And so what we've done now is, we've looked at providing an opportunity for them to come in person, voluntarily, of course, and we pay for that after school hours. They could also participate on Zoom or online after school hours. And also we've provided an option for the sessions that we have to be recorded so they can access them whenever they want. And by being able to provide a paid time for people to come in, and either do it online or during the time when they can access that programming, that's made life a little easier, because the biggest thing is we can provide the resources, but if there are barriers to access them, it's difficult for them to be able to do that. So, look at providing access, and then there's lots of great partnerships available. Look at the current partners that you have in your school district, whether it's the grants, the foundations, the county health department, all of those resources exist within your school district. So start having a look at how you can tap into those existing resources.
I think another thing to point out is that there's just, most of these districts have been very successful, usually have a 1-point person that starts organizing, and then they have a group that then builds upon it and works on these different things so that they can build these programs. So, even if you're the smallest district and you're needing, you'd like to start something, it could be something as simple as just creating a wellness room in a school where you can go and decompress and just have like a mindful moment. That's something that's very, very popular right now in a lot of different schools. Just very simple. Put some nice music on, dim the lights a little bit, have some maybe stress little things to squish or whatever, or nice comfy chairs, and just so that you can take a moment and relax a minute, do the breathing exercises if you can. So just little simple things, obviously we all have robust programs or different programs, but maybe a little tidbit you'll be able to pull from this. We're going to switch to our next topic now, which is staff retention and value and benefits. And Walter, showing that your staff is valued is a key part of retention and promoting good morale among staff. What are some ways you or others have been able to show that your staff is valued?
I think the biggest way, the number one way, is communicating with your staff. Your team needs to know exactly what's going on the district, and they're kept in a loop, and you need to be present. And what I mean by that, you need to be in your schools. You need to make it happen. You don't need to be sitting in your office 24 hours a day. You need to be out in your school. When you're out in your schools, you need to really listen to your team. I think if you want to value your employees, you need to listen to them. So often what happens is when we start speaking to somebody and we're waiting for the next thing we're going to say, we're not really listening to them. And I guarantee you that employee knows that you're not listening to them. So really listening to your folks, and that's going to add value. And then if a team member asks for something, you get it. If you can get it, get it. Don't leave them laying. If you want to devalue an employee, forget to do something you promised them to do. So if they ask us to do something, we're going to get it done. So when I go to school now, once I go around and say hi to everybody, make sure you add value there. You say hi to everybody and genuinely talk to them. You ask, what can I do for you? And an employee this past week said, what you can do for me, Walter, is get me a fatigue mat that I can stand on a serving line. Well, we had the fatigue mat there the next day. So I guarantee you that employee knows that we value them. And that was something simple, did not cost a whole lot of money. You make it happen. And we've done other things as far as we did an ice cream day. We went to an ice cream company. We said, hey, can we get an ice cream for you for free? And they agreed. I know every district can't do this, but then we made it happen. And we went to every school, all 80 schools, and brought ice cream for the day so they could have a little ice cream treat. We did the same thing with the Chick-fil-A. We asked them, can we have 400 sandwiches? And we'll figure out a way to make it happen to get to all the schools. And they agreed. And I know everybody can't do this, but some simple things that you can do is writing cards to your team. Cards, when they're sympathy cards, or if it's their birthday, or if somebody is graduating, if one of the students is graduating from their family, they actually send a card. And we have everybody in the office sign that card and send it to them. And you wouldn't believe how many of those cards end up being pinned up on the board at their school. They truly value that. And then recognizing birthdays. And maybe you can't call folks on their birthdays. You can, great. But we have an 8-minute meeting every Friday, and we recognize everybody's birthday. One of the biggest things that we did, there used to be this thing in the military called the A Award, long time before school nutrition came around. And the A Award was for the food service folks in the military. And so my boss goes out and he buys these A Awards online. We get little plaques made up, and we actually go out to the school. And we recognize people for years of service or something they've done in their school. Now, there might be another 399 employees who don't get that award, but they hear about it and they realize that we're valuing that employee, and they're happy about it. So we do recognize years of service. I've got one lady who's been around for 46 years. Guarantee the first day, every day of school. I went and saw her last week on Wednesday. I went and saw her. She knows I'm coming. So when I walk in the door, she goes, I was wondering when you're going to get here. So they know that we value. Those are simple things. We do a newsletter, and in the newsletter, we spotlight one of our employees. And then we put that on Twitter. We put that on Facebook. I think one of the biggest things for valuing your employees and your managers is, and I think somebody already mentioned this, is the training part. Actually making sure you train your staff or have a plan in place to train your staff before you send somebody out there. Because we'll get folks that don't have a lot of experience in food service, but they have that personality that can help serve kids. And so making sure you have a plan in place to train your staff. And then I'll talk about this in a little bit, but following up with your staff after you're hiring them. And then training your managers. You want to value your managers is train them into being leaders. 50% of the folks that leave in the next year leave because of their manager, because their manager wasn't a leader. So when we have our professional development, we work a lot on leadership. In our 8-minute meetings once a week, we talk about leadership. We also hype the heck out of school lunch here a week. We didn't even call it a day. It's not just a day. It is the entire week. And when you make something for school lunch here a week, let's say just don't give them a certificate and send it over there. Where's it going to end up in a drawer? We actually frame it. We signed all the way around it. It's simple. It did not cost a lot of money. And then we went out on that day and went to 80 schools, takes a lot of logistics, and brought that to every one of those schools and got pictures with them. And they were so excited about just getting that frame. Of course, it's up on the wall. If we didn't put it in the frame, it wouldn't be up on the wall. And then that same day, we did gift baskets for all the schools, and we got donations for all that. And made a gift basket for each school member, not each member, each school, we did a gift basket. And then we got, this is a really clever one. We got the administration, superintendent, the CFO, the COO, and we did a thank you video. And we had them all watch it on Friday, and they all came in on the Zoom meeting, they all watched it. I mean, you talk about feeling like they're valued. It really, really, really did value them. And then always harp on making sure that sanitation is good. So we actually do DHEC awards. They hit 100% on their DHEC report. We have a little plaque that we put together, and we're valuing that employee that they've done the work. And I've named a few things here. It's not just one thing, one magic thing that you're going to do to value your employee. It's those little things you do consistently every single day. So if I had one last word, I'd say be consistent. If you say you're going to do something, do it.
That's great. And I do like that you're not doing all of these every day. You might be doing one or another, and just it all adds up, and it shows your appreciation throughout the organization. Jessica, I know that you've discussed many ways with me about how you've been able to show your staff is valued. Could you share a couple as well?
Yeah, and I absolutely, I got to give major props to Walter, because those ideas are so great. And I want to encourage you guys. I know it can seem kind of overwhelming, and he just gave us like a laundry list of amazing things. You eat an elephant one bite at a time, guys. Try one of those things, implement it, see how it rolls, and then keep on building from there. You lead from the head, and that's what we're here to do as leaders. So I would encourage you, don't get overwhelmed by his awesomeness. And I'm doing this because he's next to me here in my Family Feud square. So, but take a little bit and see how it rolls with you. So some of the things, we got to get kind of creative in school nutrition, because USDA doesn't give us a lot of flexibility with what we can and cannot do. But some things, and I was looking for the attendance list, and there's people here from Ohio, so I'm kind of like, but it's legal. Trust me, guys, I've talked to Bridget, it's legal. But so some of the things we do is really making sure that they feel valued, because some things they like are tangible things. Like some things we can't do, and we're unionized here. So I can't just say, here's a bonus, or here's extra pay for completing an award or what have you. But we do also sponsor every single person in our district has a School Nutrition Association membership. So that means that they have the ability to go on and better themselves through professional development, either with us as a district or on their own. We also actually are allowed and give stipends in our union contract for our employees who complete the SNA certification process. So if they complete a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, there's different bonus levels they get each year for that. And that is a huge incentive for our people to go out and actually go for professional development, because we want to increase that pipeline. We want that cook to see that they can come up and be a manager. We want that manager to see they can come up and be a supervisor. So we really want to encourage that pipeline development. We also get really creative with what we can do with uniforms. So on every Friday is a school spirit wear day, and they're allowed to wear a school spirit shirt instead of just their normal uniform or chef's jacket. And so we've taken a lot of fun initiatives with t-shirt designs to give to our employees to wear on those Fridays. And whether it's a Cincinnati Bengals design or Cincinnati Reds design or FC Cincinnati design, we kind of play off our sports themes. We play off of themes with, I think if you guys are ever online, you kind of see that we post a lot of them on there. The feeding is a work of art, and it's all the food in the heart. And we'll do Scoop There It is our next one coming out. So it's a lot of fun that we try and do for different uniforms and under that allowance. For Thanksgiving last year, we gave them all special tote bags to carry their shoes and apron to and from work, because that's a necessity. So, but on a thank it says, it was a really decorated bag of CPS on it. And then we said, we totally appreciate you. It's for our Thanksgiving gift, but that was allowable because it was something that they could use specifically to make sure that they were keeping their shoes and their aprons protected and safe as they're coming to and from work each day. So there's things that you can think about that can be creative, that are still kind of, they get those and they're like, wow, that's really great, but it's within the scope of what you can and cannot do. Ohio has really strict laws on what I can ask vendors for and what I can request for donations. And so it's finding that sweet spot in your state agencies, laws, and ethic codes, and also with USDA for you to be able to still award your employees really great initiatives that are tangible for them, unlike if that's their appreciation language, right? That's back to that five languages of appreciation.
Yeah, those are amazing ideas. My favorite idea that I heard from you is the totes. Those are totally amazing. I know it sounds too cheesy, but I just love it. And then Jessica, I just have one other. We had talked about, you guys had done a photo shout out to your teams, where if you caught them doing something really good, you would do a little shout out. And that's something that doesn't cost anything and shows appreciation and value. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so everybody's always afraid of, it's just natural instinct. If I walk into a kitchen, everybody's like, oh my gosh, what'd we do wrong? Who got us in trouble? But, we try and go out and catch them doing good. Like, that's our goal. I'm not out there to make the tick charts on the check sheet. I'm out there to find what's doing good. And so when we see fun, bulletin boards, or a really delicious looking serving line, or we see exceptional service, or someone's going above and beyond, we take a picture of what's going on in that school, and then we actually blast it out to our whole entire student dining services group and say, look at what Team Oilers done, or look at Team AWL and all the great stuff they're doing for their scholars, and hope to kind of get that energized competition amongst, well, we could do that too. We want Jessica's picture to go out. And so you get that kind of inner competition to try and continue to be and elevate the best they can be at every school for every scholar.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's just so simple and doesn't cost anything, but just another way to show that you value. I think somebody in the chat had said that they do bulletin board notes, and to appreciate their team as well. I've spoken with others where they have done that as well, where they set up a bulletin board and people can put a little thank you note in, or we appreciate you from either from the school or from the kids. And that's another really simple way to show value and appreciation for the employees. Marla, could you share some ideas on using awards and incentives for employee retention and value? I know Walter mentioned that they do for length of service and things like that, but I know that there's been pins and things that you've done, or awards with other, like a Employee of the Year award, things like that. Could you mention a little bit about that?
Sure, Alana, but before I do that, can I go back to the last question? And it's kind of really basic to me, but in terms of retention and employees feeling valued, I really think you need to walk the talk. Whether we think it or not, our employees are watching us all the time. They just are. Whether they love us to death, they're watching us. And especially during the pandemic, employees had to come to work because they had to serve the kids one way or the other, grab and go or whatever. And if supervisory staff was allowed to work from home, they saw that. And that certainly didn't improve their feeling of being valued or being equal. So I really think that, and it ties into what Jessica, as well as what Walter said, we got to walk the talk. And if there's a shortage in a school, none of us are too important to jump right into that school and help out or run that cafeteria for the day. And believe me, everybody in the district is going to know that you did that. And you should do it without, without expecting a thank you. You just do it because you're one of the team. The other piece that I would suggest is, while it's wonderful for us to come and give them the recognition personally, nothing like having an outside person do it. I would reach out to, or we have reached out to principals to make sure that they recognize the fact that the cafeteria is really part of the academic team, and that they get the employees, the staff, the teachers, and themselves to recognize the cafeteria for the amazing amount of work that they do, and the special things that might be unique in any school. So I just really think that having them recognize the fact that they are part of that academic environment, as important as English and math, goes a long way with our employees. So to your question, yes, again, it's tied to partnerships and to what Jessica said and what Janine said earlier. Every state is different. One of the awards incentives that we used money that was provided to us as a partnership from a vendor, a nationwide manufacturer, and put it into what we call a hospitality account, and then had an incentive program that was open to all the schools. At the time, it had to do with participation. So any school that increased their participation by a percentage, 5%, 7%, was eligible for being awarded. And depending on how many schools met that, the pot was divided and each employee got a piece of the pot. That went over super. We also recognized perfect attendance. Not that we want employees to come to work if they're sick, but if they've made it to work every day without taking a sick day, that's not bereavement or anything that obviously they couldn't prevent, but we acknowledge them with a pin for that. And so it's just something to the one other thing is, I don't know if we're still doing like the cool school points with the vendors. And we, for the students, we did lucky plates where they would turn over a tray and they'd get a little prize. But we used some of the cool school points for movie tickets. And we did raffles. So employees their name could be pulled in a raffle, and they could get 2 tickets to a movie. That was a real perk. So it definitely is creative. It's not, you can't do it without some support from outside, but it really goes a long way to making employees feel valued.
It's great. Lots of great knowledge that's coming up here. And I'm looking at the clock and I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more I want to ask. We might have to have a part 2, Janine. Okay. So let me ask Hitesh. We know that a big piece of staff retention has to deal with increasing benefits and pay. So could you talk about some things your district has implemented as an increased benefit for your staff? And the lovely mute, there you go.
I'm doing my breathing so well that I haven't unmuted myself.
Yeah.
We benchmarked our salaries for our aides and found that we were paying at least 10% below our surrounding school districts. So we worked with our Board of Education and the unions, and our aides got a 12% increase from July 1, 2022. We are also firm believers in the wellness of our staff. So we increased the benefits we pay for the medical portion of insurance up to 93%. And we also pay 100% benefits for dental and vision for our employees. Now, in food services, most employees don't work between 6 to 8 hours to get that full-time benefit. So what we've done is, where we can combine some positions, you work in food services and you work here for a little bit, it gives you that 6 to 8 hour position so you can qualify for benefits. And then, we also provide a stipend for staff to do professional development, either before their contract starts for the school year, or even during the course of the school year, if we want to promote and have some professional development, giving them paid time to be able to do that. So increase of benefits, salaries, and paid time to do professional development.
Okay, and with that professional development, that's they can do whatever they want. It's not just has to be related to the job. Is that correct?
So we give them one where they can choose what they want, and that's not necessarily related to the job, and they can go ahead and do that.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great aspect. Okay, Walter, I wanted to hit on your idea with, we discussed an interesting idea about how you help your new staff with retention. So I believe you had identified an issue with retaining the staff that you hired, and you put in this plan in place to help with that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if most of us actually looked at what our retention is, and so we took a deep dive in our retention, we realized that most of the folks that we were losing were in those first 9 months. So how can we cut that in half or cut it by 70%? And I think that no one was paying attention to it, so we weren't. So that's the reason folks were leaving. So what we've done is when we interview an employee, a new applicant, we actually set the expectations. It's almost like their first job evaluation. We set the expectations in the job interview, and we make them sign off on it. So now they've already got the expectations for the job. And so I know some folks can't do this, but we have a training program. So when they go to the training manager reads those same expectations and they sign off on it. So if you're going to lose somebody, you're going to lose somebody in the beginning instead of investing all that time. And then when they hit their final destination school, it's done again. But the other thing we do is have somebody in central office who follows up with that employee. Things going. So they'll call them in those first few days and say how things are going. The supervisor of the school will go and say, how are things going? If it's a school I'm going to visit, I'll make sure I go in there and address that employee and ask them, how are things going? Or again, that question of, is there anything that you need? So we consistently follow that employee all the way through the process. So in that first 9 months, we don't lose them. And then the other thing is that you need to be reachable. Let that employee know that they can reach you. Because if you're not reachable, you look at that phone and go, it's so-and-so, I don't want to answer it. And that's not the right thing to do. So we're very reachable, but the big point is we follow up those first few weeks, and then we'll follow up the next month. And then the expectation part is, one last thing is we'll actually sit down with the employee, read the expectations, and then we'll say how we understand them, and then we'll turn it around and say, how do you understand the expectations of the job? And we do believe that's going to help with our retention.
Yeah, and so far it has, right? From when you started implementing it. Mm-hmm. It's also gaining that you're building that trust relationship with those employees and creating that avenue of communication for them so that they're comfortable in order to talk with you or ask. Like when you go in there and you say, what do you need? Maybe they're not comfortable to ask for what they need, but by creating these avenues for communication, that's really helpful to create that, to help them to want to ask.
It's building a culture. It's going to take, to build a good culture, it's going to take 2 to 3 years. So if you start now and do those little things every day that we were talking about, you'll have a great culture in 2 to 3 years.
Okay, I'm skipping around some of these questions that I had planned. So Marlo, what are some ways that you have been able to show employees that they have been heard? What are some things that you have done, so that that these employees can be heard?
Sure. So whether it's online or whether it's in person, to have what we call it a town hall. It's sort of a group of people. It could be a cluster of schools. It could be all of the schools together in a pre-service or in-service day, and allow for just the conversation to flow. And believe me, there are some flows that you would really not want to have in the forum of 800 people, but that's okay. And what's important, and Walter mentioned that, is regardless of what the issue that is brought up, that there is an answer that, or response that comes back to that answer. To give you an example, I mean, there were, I'm trying to think of in the past, but something about, let's use the floor mat idea. I mean, oftentimes, could we get some of those fatigue mats in our school, or could we get something under our chair so our chair doesn't roll? And so the question is, we go back and we do our research, and for 208 schools, it could cost. But then we might go back and say, okay, how many of you would want it? Here's the cost, and be transparent. And so having those open conversations, and having supervisors go to their schools and have those meetings, and having, there's an internal, where I came from, we had an internal email system. Put something out on the email, and ask for response. Let their response be heard. And also do something that doesn't mean they're going to get everything they want, but they get a response. So you've heard them, you've acknowledged them, and it may be a conversation that gets continued, or it may end with the response, but respond.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest things is, you can put it out there that you want to hear from them, but if you don't respond, then they feel like they haven't been heard. So having those
Alana, I know that you're trying to move on, and I respect you, and you're doing an amazing job, but can I go one step back, please? I just kind of want to talk about the other incentives. One is we offered a bunch of courses like Today's Manager, which helps an employee become a manager, or the Serve Save training, which we funded for the employees. And then when they want to go to a promotion or opportunity, we look at that resume of courses that they've taken. So of itself, there's an incentive to take those courses, because they know that it's an employee opportunity to move forward.
veterans.
The only other thing, and I'm sorry, but let me say this, is that when a school starts a new program, for instance, Universal Breakfast, using a seasoned manager to be the trainer for that school, not that you're short staff or short supervisory staff, but empowering an existing manager to be the trainer goes really the distance, because they know how much you value them. Okay, I'm done.
That's great. Those are all great examples. Let me ask, I want to dive in a little bit. Walter, I know that you do your, as one of your forums to hear and communicate with your employees, is that 8-minute meeting. And you kind of do something special during that 8-minute meeting with the wheel. So could you tell a little bit about what you do with that? Because I know you're just amazing, and so, but you have all these great little ideas that I think people can really learn from.
Every Friday we have an 8-minute meeting with the managers, and people, why 8 minutes? Because that's all the time I think we can get their attention, because they are busy. But they will all show up at 8 minutes, and they'll have their team behind them watching on Zoom. And if any of the managers or their staff have recommended somebody for hire, then we've got little gifts that we give away, and we have all their names on this electronic, spin wheel, and we spin the wheel, and somebody wins a prize in front of everybody else. And they get excited when somebody else, even if they don't win it, somebody else wins the prize. But that meeting has been so valuable, because then at the last part of the meeting, they let me talk for a minute, and then I'll do something that hopefully is a little bit motivational. They don't let me talk a lot, because I go on for a long time. But it's really paid off. And one other thing I would say is that every one of my former employees has my cell phone number, and they know that I'm up running and at 4:15 in the morning, and they will call me. So I am reachable. So be reachable. Might not be at 4:15, but be reachable.
Okay. So you were talking about a little bit of how you try to do something motivational to build the build up your team with the motivational speech. the little bit that they hear from you, which is great. So that all goes into building a strong workforce. And Hitesh, every district is different, but what are some habits that you work on in building your team that have alleviated stress?
So the great thing talking about food services is who doesn't like to eat? And so one of the fun ways that we do employee appreciation and relieving stress at the same time is to hold staff barbecues, and we'll get staff in a couple of times. Now, we're not utilizing food service product. It's all stuff that we either get donated or, as managers share in the cost of, but we'll have a staff appreciation barbecue. Or we'll also have potluck lunches with our staff. We also do little things like, recognizing staff like Employee of the Month. And I've heard other examples of how, we also put stuff out there on Facebook and on internal communications and that sort of stuff as well. But the important thing is also celebrating staff. So at the staff meetings, recognizing something special that someone's done, a birthday, participation numbers, all that kind of stuff as well. And one of the other things that I think, and it's been reinforced throughout this meeting as well, is go and visit your school sites. Not only when they're having problems, go and visit them and catch them doing something great. Visit your school sites and make sure that you're doing that when there's not a problem. The other thing that we do is involve people right up front. Work as a team, and we call it Team Pittsburgh, so we call it Team Pitt for Pittsburgh. But it's saying what's our goals for this year, and how do we envision success for our team? What do we do well last year? What can we replicate? But where can we improve? What are the barriers, and how can we remove those barriers? And then working with our staff to work throughout the year and get those things removed, get them what they need so they can serve kids right at the front line where there is. And I kid you not, celebrating those successes often is extremely important. Those are the ways that we do to relieve stress in our school district.
That's wonderful. I think we have just a teeny bit more time, and I can ask one more question, unless one of you has something burning that you want to share that we haven't covered yet. No? Okay. Walter, could you talk a little bit about what your district has done with team building events? I know that team building has been kind of on hold since the COVID pandemic, and we haven't been able to get together, but it's a big topic that people really want to do in building their team. Any tips or any things that you can share that you've done in the past?
So before the pandemic, and we're going to start it back up this year, we had a holiday party, and that was sponsored by our local SNA. And we made a family event, and we've done that for a few years, and we're going to start that back up. So it gives us a chance for their families to see us, and it really creates a really good culture. And then at the end of the year, we get distributors, manufacturers to donate items, and we do a picnic, and again, invite the families back out for that. We let our managers that want to be part of what's called a harvest dinner. It's put on by one of our partners, Green Heart Project. They do this harvest dinner every year, and our managers that want to participate in it, in the harvest dinner, we let them participate. And then they actually have volunteer days where you can go out and do the harvesting. So I've actually been on the ground harvesting out sweet potatoes. So when your managers and your staff sees you doing that, getting on your hands and knees, it definitely builds some value there. And then lastly, at our PDs, I'd say 70% of our professional development now is on wellness and team building and valuing our employees. Because just about everything else, we can probably send in an email to them. So it's really amazed how it's switched over the last 2.5, 3 years.
Really important. It's really important.
Can I bump in
okay.
real quick? I just want to make sure, because I think one of the questions I'm seeing here from one of our awesome participants is about how to do this for childcare settings. And I think that you have 4 school nutrition directors here who are speaking, and I want to make sure a lot of what we're saying is really transferable. I really believe that there's things we can be doing. But some of the things that I do specifically for my staff here at my office, so my central staff. staff that's not actually out at schools. We will actually bring in a massage chair therapist. Usually, right, we actually had on the Wednesday before school started to make sure everybody was kind of like a little bit relaxed and ready to go. Just a 15-minute chair massage. Everybody gets their turn, and then we have a potluck lunch. And it's one of those things where it's just a nice bonding experience and relaxing experience. It's something you could very easily do in a childcare setting, rotating through the classrooms of different people watching class as well. The two teachers are getting their chair massage. We also just implemented a workout room. So in our central office, we now have treadmills, ellipticals, and stationary bikes. So if someone wants to go on their lunch break and kind of decompress and also get a little bit of health and wellness in their day, they can just go down to the exercise room and get that done. And that's something you can probably find an area in your childcare setting where it's there. It's an extra added bonus without having to give them a gym membership where they then have to have one more thing they have to go to and do in their day. It's right there where they work. So little things like that. And honestly, we got our stuff used. Planet Fitness was getting rid of all of their stuff and getting brand new in. And I was like, ooh, hi, can I have some of that? Like, you know, and the worst they can say to you is no, right? I mean, okay, I'll take my ball and go play with somebody else. So it doesn't hurt to ask. So you never know what you're going to get from somebody who's willing to help you have a better experience for your staff. And thank you for doing God's work and working with our youngsters and our children. And you are what's allowing us to have people come and work in our schools by taking care of their children. So I can't thank you enough for all you're doing and in the childcare industry.
Yeah, I love the potluck idea is like the most simple idea. I know that when I was at Montgomery County, we would do it pretty much in the summertime. We would do it on Fridays, and it was just the greatest thing in the world where we could come back from being out in the field and there would be lunch for us, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. But also a lot of within the different kitchens as well, or in the different schools, they would do their own little potlucks at the end of the day. And they would everyone bring something representative of their culture. So it became a big kind of eye-opening of or they would pick a theme and everyone would bring something along the theme. So, you know, just being able to see that and to bond with one another without having to do work just made it more fun and showed value for everyone else on a personal level. Janine, I think we might have one or two questions that we have about 5 minutes left, so being sensitive of the time. Do you want to ask a couple of those questions, or one of them at least, and then we can go from there?
Sure. I'll ask the question. Marla, thank you so much, and Jessica for addressing the second one. This one question is specific. It looks like it was specifically to Walter, but they asked, with the overwhelming amount of administrative duties, how do you suggest making time to visit schools and employees? When I spend time in schools, I get very behind in all the paperwork and emails that are required by my administration and the state. My field managers, 3 of them, are in schools every day, but as a department head, I find it very difficult to spend a lot of time away from the office without stressing myself out and working tons of overtime. So I'll direct that at Walter, but if y'all have suggestions as well, have at it.
Good question. They may not like my answer. I just believe that everybody has time in their day. You're gonna have to say no to something else so that you can go out and be in your schools and do not do drive-bys. And yes, we have supervisors that are out over all the schools, but you need to say no to something so you can do this. If it's important to you, you'll do it. Or you might not feel it's going to be beneficial, but I feel it's beneficial being out in the schools. Or maybe just institute the 8-minute meeting on Friday if you can't be out in schools, because a lot of directors out there have more responsibilities in. They might be the free and reduced coordinator too. I am not. I have somebody who does that. So I get that. If there's other duties that somebody else isn't doing, they might not be able to get out. But try the 8-minute Zoom meeting.
I would add to Walter, and I would say start your day by going to a school, because I know when you go to the office, you get inundated and then like, fine, I can't leave. So start your day, decide that you're going to go to 3 or 4 or 5 schools in a couple of hours, and block off your calendar for that day, unless something incredible comes up and then you move it to another day. But as Walter said, it's a priority. I mean, that is a priority.
Yep, and that's what I have. I put in the answer here is I actually have a standing calendar appointment every Tuesday and Thursday to go out to a school. And so it's blocked out, so they can't put a meeting on there. And it helps me with time management. So I know that that hour right there is dedicated there. So it motivates me to make sure I've got my other, my emails and my reports and everything done, so I can make sure that that hour is mine to visit my teams.
Can I piggyback on that too? That's a super great point. Start small. Just take, maybe it's 1 hour on one day a week and start there. Your staff will know you're out there.
Mm-hmm. And they'll hear about it and they'll be waiting for you to come to their school. So I think we can probably, we have a couple, like 2 minutes. So I'll just ask you guys one question. Do you have any final tips that you would like to share about anything that we've spoken about, like quick little tips? We can start with, I'll start with Hitesh.
Well, just a quick thing. I mean, one of the biggest concerns we have right now is a shortage of staffing, which I think is prevalent throughout. And what we've been able to do in our school district is hire high school students to help serve meals in the high school, and they earn money while doing that. So that's really a big thing for us and helping us alleviate the staffing shortage.
That's great. And Jessica, you have a tip?
It just give grace. We're all going through a lot right now, and we're all trying to flip and pivot back to a time that we all are kind of a little bit out of practice on. We're a little off balance. So just making sure you're giving yourself some grace, kind of like the whole, we secure our own, mask before we secure those others. To give yourself some grace, give your team some grace. I think that's an important aspect to look at.
How about you, Walter?
So when I get up in the morning, I look at it from the employee standpoint, and I stole this from John Maxwell. But your employees are going to ask you 3 questions every morning if they want to stay with you. They're going to ask themselves, can you help me? Do you care about me? And can I trust you? So that's what I think about. Can my employees, can I help them? Do I care about them? And can I trust them? And I ask the folks online, can they?
And Marla?
Everybody on this call that's involved in food services is in it because you love what you do and you love the children that you serve. So remember that, and remember that at the end of the day, you're making a difference, and help your employees recognize they're doing the best that they can. And if something doesn't happen throughout the course of a day, at the end of the day, they still made the difference in the life of a child.
Yep, those are all great tips. Janine, do you have any final last things you would like to say?
Sure.
We'll right at 3:16.
I know y'all have done amazing. It has felt just like a conversation. There's so many great ideas that have been shared. One thing that I was looking at, like things that I've learned and trying to like figure out, like, there's so many nuggets. And then I remembered that Alana's working on this amazing resource to capture all this information. So it's going to be helpful. Everyone who is registered for this webinar will receive that. You'll receive the recording, and you'll receive the PowerPoint. And one thing in the PowerPoint, I put that Hitesh was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but he's from California. So my mistake. So sorry about that. That will be corrected before we send out the PowerPoint. I learned so much in this time. Like, I've heard these nuggets, but it's almost like you have to hear them again. And when you're stressed, you can't remember things, right? So hearing a few things, just what I learned from Hitesh is keep your mental health O2 mask on, your oxygen mask on. So take care of yourself first, everyone. Don't forget to do that, because if you're not doing well, it's hard to take care of anyone else or feed anyone else. Jessica pointed out, and this is super important when we're looking or thinking about employee wellness, a lot of times FNS staff is not considered, and they do it, y'all or your district may do things during the lunch hour. So be mindful of that. And the amazing book that she shared, the 5 languages of appreciation. And that was in the chat as well. Marla mentioned motivational classes and partnerships. Like, you cannot understate the importance of reaching out. We don't have to do this all by ourselves, and making sure people feel valued. Super important. Walter, so many great tips. And at the heart of all of that is, how do we make our staff feel valued? As people, when we feel valued, we will put in that extra effort, or we do want to get up and come to work every day. We do remember the kids, right? Because they always make us feel valued. And a few other things I wrote down: celebrating success often, finding that sweet spot in the codes and how to reward employees. And the last, it doesn't hurt to ask. So if you don't, a lot of times we don't have the resources, but someone else does. Someone else wants to help a school, or wants, remember when I was a PTA, not a PTA mom, but I worked at my daughter's school, just volunteered. We did, a health fair, and I went around to the supermarkets and I'm like, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to help? Sure enough, people started volunteering, giving. We got bagels and bananas and oranges, and as long as those weren't paired with donuts, the kids loved them. They were like, wow, this is amazing. So it's just, you just have to keep asking, right? So I wanted to thank everyone for your participation, for the panelists, for Alana, just making this so smooth and so fun to be a part of. She's done a lot of work on the front end, and Chelsea, who is in the background, really making this smooth as well. So I wanted to just remind everyone, there's going to be a survey that you're going to get after this webinar ends. Please fill out the survey. Help us to make these webinars better and consistent by providing what you need. And there'll be a question like, do you want to go deeper on any of these topics? I think it's the last one on just suggestions on topics. So please answer that. And that resource is coming. Thank you guys so much.
And I just have one quick thing to say. Thank you for everyone and sharing. I was able to bring these panelists together to share everything. But the one great thing about this industry is that we're not competing against one another. And so just remember that, go and ask in your network what they're doing. I know it takes time or whatever, but this is all organized by me just going to people in the network and saying, hey, what are you doing? What can we share? Because everyone wants to share and help each other and make everyone do something better than what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Alana.